the idea of not being married was the toughest thing. And I'm still married, but I don't have my wife, I guess is the best way to say it. And now we are not going to be together for the rest of my Air Force career.
Are there any people that you still keep in contact with today?
I used to. I will tell you this, a very good friend of mine passed away 3 years ago. And I think the last time that I had contacted him was about 10 years ago. And his wife sent me an email and let me know that he died of cancer. And his name was Al Frankel. And, he and I were in the Philippines together, best friends. And you miss these people. Some of the others, Wayne Thompson and I continued to talk to each other until about 1986. He had some marital problems, and that kind of took a lot of his time. Jim Crossan lived in Utah for a while, and then I lost track of him. Eddie Holden lived in Tennessee and lost track of him also.
How many times were you able to go back home for the time period?
This is interesting because when you're stateside in the Air Force, my rank was a non-commissioned officer. I was a sergeant. So I was not restricted to the base for any reason. If I needed to take a Friday off, we had something that was called a comprehensive time. So if I worked extra hours during the month and all of a sudden I'm thinking I need a break, I could talk to my non-commissioned officer in charge and say, Master Sergeant Nelson, I'd like to have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. And he would approve it. I didn't have to use any leave time. And being in Wichita, Kansas, I could catch a flight from Wichita to Kansas City to Sioux City, and I'd be home in less than 6 hours. And the same thing coming back. So as far as coming back to see high school friends, and as I said, before she was my wife, I guess you call her my fiance, frequently. I'm going to say once every 2 or 3 months I'd come back. And the other thing is some of my friends came down to Wichita to visit me, since Wichita was different than Sioux City. It was kind of fun for them. So that worked out pretty good. Once you get overseas, then it's a different story. I worked for the first mobile communication group, and I had to have a passport. The reason I had to have a passport is because this is 1970. At that time, it was known that the United States military was in places they shouldn't be, like Cambodia and Laos. So if I would ever have to go there, I would go as a civilian, but I was still military. So I had what was called a State Department passport. I never used mine, but a couple of guys that were in my unit did go. Again, we're working with communications, so sometimes this communication stuff is necessary. We didn't have a lot of satellites orbiting the Earth. We had some, so that the guys that were into satellite communications, they were the guys that typically went to help out the CIA in places they shouldn't be. We did have guys that went to Vietnam. We had tactical navigation, so that's before we had GPS. Where are the airplanes? How do you keep track of them? It was always through tactical navigation. So you put a big radar antenna on a high spot and another one over here and another one over there. If you know the distance between your tactical navigation spots, then you can locate your aircraft at any given point and direct them to wherever they need to drop their bombs or shoot their rockets. So I didn't get to go to Vietnam. I went to Korea instead.
Is that where you were when the war ended?
You know, it's kind of crazy because the war ended after I got out of the Air Force. I was released on January 27, 1971, I had 4 years and 8 months in the military. President Nixon had offered early release for anybody wanting to go to college, but you had to have, at that time, 3 months if you're not married, 4 months or less to go in the Air Force to apply for it. And I had 4 months, so I got lucky. So I got out 4 months early. The crazy thing is they were going to send me back to Korea. In Korea, in the winter, January, it's just like Sioux City. It is miserably cold, miserably windy, and miserably snowy. So I was happy to come back home. 1970. And the war really ended in 1975. We had a 73-hour involvement.
So in those like 4 to 5 years you were attending college?
Yes. Yeah, that was the readjustment blues period. So I'm coming back to a marriage. I haven't seen my wife in almost 11 months. And want to go to college. Got to find a job. So all those things kind of collapse on you. And then we decided to have a child. Heather, my daughter, was born in 1972 on my birthday, March 30th. And that makes it even harder. So the marriage eventually dissolved in 1977, as amicably as any marriage can dissolve. I still have a relationship with my former wife in that we can communicate with each other. So that works.
Was the only one daughter, Heather?
At that time, yes, Heather. I am since then remarried, and I have 3 other children. But I got my degree, and that's kind of what I was really after, was to get on with the rest of my life.
What did you get a degree in?
I got a degree in chemistry from the University of South Dakota in 1980. So if you track that, I was released in 1971. It took me 9 years to get my bachelor's degree. But a lot of that was part-time school. So I worked full-time and went to school part-time until the divorce, and I wrapped up my college career.
What exactly have you done since being separated from the military?
When I was discharged, that was a good feeling, because we always think that discharge means honorably, you're done. I had about 2 years of what they call inactive reserve. In case something crazy happened, they could call me back. So I had to keep some of my uniforms, and so I had those in a spot in the closet just in case. But I worked as a baker at Wonder Bread Bakery. I mentioned that before I went into the Air Force. I worked there. When I came back, because I, as a person, had a job there, I could reclaim my job. So I did. And then to go to school, it worked better for me to get a shift job. And I worked at Sioux Tools as a machinist. And I did that for 5 years. And then, like I said, after the divorce, I decided I needed to focus on school and get that over with. After getting my degree, I worked as a chemist at Knox Gelatin for about 8 months. And General Motors had a facility in Sioux City at the time, and I applied for work there and worked for them for about 13 years. And I became a teacher. Then I retired.
Where did you serve as a teacher?
South Sioux City Junior High School for about 9 years and 11 years at the high school. I taught chemistry for 9 of those years. I taught physical science for 1, and my very last year I taught biology, which I had 2 courses in biology at the time, but we did a flip. We moved biology to 9th grade from 10th grade, physical science from 9th grade to 10th grade. So I think all freshmen take biology now, and all sophomores take physical science. So we did that switch. So I had to teach biology 1 year, and that was a struggle for me.
So what are some like hobbies of yours or activities that you do besides work, school?
Photography, I got involved in photography when I was at McConnell Air Force Base. My father had an old 35 millimeter rangefinder camera, and it took good pictures, adequate pictures. And I decided to get into slides because I don't know if you guys have ever seen the old slides. You got a slide projector and you can project it on the wall, and if your projector's close, it's a small picture, and if you move away, far away, you get this huge picture. So you could have a picture of a very small flower that was as big as the screen behind me. It looks pretty neat. When I was in the Philippines, I purchased a single lens reflex camera, and it takes much greater pictures, and you have more ranges of more capabilities, I guess the best way to say it. So I still do a lot of that. Now with digital, I don't know if any of you ever take photographs with the old film cameras. So you take your canister in, somebody develops it, and then you look at it and you think, wow, half of them are good, half of them are bad. Digital, wow, take them all, throw the ones out, print the ones you want.
You said you worked with the radio technology, so how has technology changed?
That is so interesting because the Survivable Low Frequency Communication System was produced by Westinghouse, and it used light, I should say infrared LEDs. So infrared meaning heat, and LEDs mean light emitting diode. And so when you go to the store and get your cash register receipt, you don't hear any bzz, 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 anything like that. It just kind of scrolls out. Those are your infrared LEDs. So back in 1969, when I was learning this system, that was part of it. The integrated circuits had 12 pins. That's a maximum that they could hold at the time. Now I think 32 pin is pretty much what they use, but they can be smaller. So I went from tube technology, TV, that's a tube, to what we called at that time the TO5 can with 12 pins technology, and I had to learn the difference between the digital and the analog, and it worked. The problem is when you come back to Sioux City, there's no jobs. At that time there was a company called Zenith. They manufactured televisions, but it was predominantly tube-type television. And I applied for a job there. They were willing to pay me $2.75 an hour, and I was making $4.35 at the bakery. So I mean, it did take a genius to stay with a bakery for more money. So yeah, I went from that old era to modern era, analog to digital.
Sorry, you go.
Do you still have any habits that you find yourself doing even after being out of the military for so long?
I will tell you this. I used to be a sound sleeper. I mean, people would shake me and shake me and shake me and say, come on, wake up. After basic training, if somebody touches me, I will wake up. And I don't mean groggy. I mean full alert. So that's something that they instilled in me. And, you know, I remember when my current wife and I first got married, and she would roll over in the bed, it would wiggle the bed, and it would wake me up. And I was ready to get up and go to work, I guess, but it was, that's still with me, even to this day. If my grandkids come in and jump in bed, if I'm sleeping, I'm awake. And I'm not like, hey, good to see you. Whoa, what's going on? I'm kind of awake.
What are some life lessons that you have learned through all of this?
Patience, I guess, is the main one. Like I said, I thought after I learned the 47L survivable low frequency communication system that my life was going to be pretty well set. In fact, I was going to go to Wichita State University as an Air Force person, and that was going to get me ahead so I could end up with a master's degree in using my GI Bill, and that was totally gone. I was very angry about that for a long time. I blame the Air Force for messing up my life, and you just have to sometimes just accept those things. I have to admit though, the guys that I befriended was in the radio shop in the First Mobile Communication Group. They were very supportive because everybody was in the same situation. You get over it, you find other things to do that are kind of fun, and try to survive the worst and roll with the best.
As Americans today, do you have anything that you would like us to understand of the past or maybe realize?
Well, one of the things that really concerns me about our current president is that he uses this idea that we can just lob a nuclear weapon at somebody anytime we want to, and that's going to take care of the problem. And I know I'm overstating it, but it concerns me how easy this president uses those terms. I want you to know that we don't have the Titan II missile anymore, so we don't have the 10 megaton, but we still have weapons that are extremely accurate due to GPS. So we can place a nuclear device within 30, 40 feet of where we want it to hit. And that's still a terrible effect. The size of these multiple independently re-entry vehicles are at least the size of what we dropped on Japan. And we saw the effect of what that did to the Japanese. Nuclear devices are for a deterrent only. If we ever think that we can use one, it's time to rethink. That's way too far. The other thing that bothers me, this current conflict that we seem to have in the Middle East, it's not the same as Vietnam. It's parallel to it. As Mark Twain said, it rhymes with it. We are involved in a long-term war effort where people are making multiple tours of duty trying to get things straightened out, and we haven't got them straightened out yet. So I don't know what that means exactly, except going back to patience. We need to develop patience and listen and try to solve problems rather than create more problems. I'm always reminded that with every decision you got to make a choice, and choices have consequences, and some consequences are not what you want. It's the ones that you didn't expect to happen. So I really want intelligent people making decisions that understand consequences and other consequences that might happen because of it. That concerns me, because I have grandchildren. Some are your age, some are younger. I have children, and I would like to think that it's going to be a better world rather than a worse world.
As a veteran, what do you think about what's been going on with the NFL and people kneeling?
Well, Mr. Shadle and I have had a conversation about that. That's a tough one, but I got to be honest with you. There is a racial issue in the United States from my perspective. I don't think we solved it in 1865 and 6 with the Civil War ending. I think it's been something that we avoid. I don't know how to solve that issue in the United States. It was part of our heritage when we designed the Constitution. That was part of it. And I don't know how to get over that part. I personally would like to say that I wish everyone would respect the flag and the anthem, but I gotta be honest with you, if you attend 5 sporting events in a week, how many times have you heard the national anthem? And that concerns me that for some reason we have to play it before sporting events. So I've got mixed emotions on it. Can I just give you a response to something I'm sure you probably would have asked it. Communications back in the late 60s and early 70s. You had the telephone. In my barracks at McConnell Air Force Base, there was a payphone, and it had a rotary dial. I could call home anytime that I wanted to in the United States by finding a rotary dial telephone. Hit the O, run it all the way around, pull your finger out, and it would click, 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 go back, and the operator would pick up. And she would say, I'm not trying to be sexist, at that time, operators were female. Can I help you? And I would say, yes, I'd like to place a collect telephone call, and I would give her the number. She would dial it, and I, listening, could hear her say to the party that answered the phone, I have a collect call from Larry Bauer. Will you accept the charges? And if that party said, yes, I will, then I could talk. So either a friend that I want to talk to, my parents, or my fiance, I could contact them anytime I wanted to, even if I didn't have any money. Mail. Mail was the primary route for letters. So if you had something personal that you wanted to say, you could address it to that individual, put your stamp on it. 3 to 4 days, the letter would get there. 3 to 4 days, the response would come back to you. So in that time, you had to keep in your mind, what did I say that this person is now responding to? And then when I got to the Philippines, that extended to 7 days. So there's a 2-week delay in communications. I can remember my mother, I had the hardest time keeping that communication straight because she would respond immediately, and that was 2 weeks, and other people, they were kind of lazy and it might take 3 weeks. But so my mother and I, we were always 2 weeks apart from our last communication. So it was kind of humorous in that way. And then if I went to Korea, that added another week because I transferred from the Philippines. All my letters coming to the Philippines would now go up to Korea. My new address, so those are silly. Telephone calls from the Philippines were expensive. There was no collect call. So I remember when I needed to get my college acceptance letter approved, I spent $50 on a phone call for about 4 minutes, just to make sure that the college understood I needed this done now. I couldn't wait till next week. We got that 7-day delay before it gets back to us. And it worked. But if you needed to get a hold of somebody immediately, it's going to be expensive. Today, everybody has a cell phone. You want to talk to somebody from Australia, go ahead. You're linked. Back then, it was totally different.
As we begin to conclude this interview, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I hope all of you understand that anytime we involve war as part of the solution, that means there's going to be death and destruction. And the death...
Excuse me.
Yes?
Mr. Faber, can I have you pick up your phone, please?